Hello everyone and welcome back to the EL99 coursebook. In this video, we're going to be going over the second and third part of Unit 4. So we're going to be doing 4B first, and then in the same video, we're also going to be doing 4C. In 4B, we have changing cities, and we're also going to be talking a little bit about the present perfect and past simple. When do we use them, some examples, and then we'll do some exercises to make sure you get the point. So let's start with exercise 1. Here it says, look at the two photos of Shenzhen in China. How are they different? I'd like you to pause the video for about 30 seconds, take a look at both photos, and think to yourself, what do you see? If you're in pairs, talk to the other person. What do you guys see? And then come back and we'll discuss them while continuing the video. Okay, so assuming you have a general idea of what's going on, the two photos are set in the same city in China. It's called Shenzhen, but one looks to be much more modern, perhaps a more modern area than the other. Another one is under construction. Perhaps it's two different time periods. Maybe this was in the 30s and this was in the 60s, or this was in the 60s and this was in like the late 90s, for example. So it could be two different areas. It could be two different time periods, which I think it's more likely to be the second one, to be completely honest with you. I think the photos showcase something that once started fairly small and turned into this huge modern city. So now let's take a look at exercise 2. We're actually going to be listening to an audio here. All right. Let me reset these. Listen to Dayu, a resident of Shenzhen, talk about the changes in her city. Which statement is false? So I'm going to play this audio once. First of all, I'd like you to listen to the audio and see if your guesses were correct or not. And then we have 3 statements here. I'd like you to take a look at these statements and tick the one that is false. So I'm going to play the audio now. Listen to the changes happening in the city, and then tick the wrong statement. Here we go.
My name is Dai Yu. I was born in 1972 and I am from the city of Shenzhen in southern China. My city has changed so much in my lifetime. It's incredible. When I was a child, it was just a fishing village. But Shenzhen has become a very important world city. In 1980, the Chinese government made it a special economic zone, and it began to change very quickly. The population has grown so much. In 1979, it was about 314,000. Now it is more than 10 million. In just 5 years, from 1990 to 1995, the population grew from 1,214,000 to 4,491,000. Most of the people in Shenzhen have moved from other parts of China, and millions of them leave the city at the weekend and go back to see their families. But, of course, it's not just the population that has grown. 30 years ago, there weren't any tall buildings in Shenzhen. But today, there are 23 buildings over 200 meters high. My favorite is the Shunhing Square. Workers finished building it in 1996, and at that time, it was the tallest building in Asia. It's difficult to say if all these changes have been positive or negative. A lot of things have improved, of course. We have better roads and an international airport, and we even have a metro system. It opened in 2004, and all the development has created a lot of jobs. But not everything has been good. Pollution has got worse, and, of course, the city is more crowded now.
Okay, so that was a very interesting audio. Now let's take a look at the statements. We have Shenzhen has changed a lot. Is this true or is this false? It is absolutely true. It went through a lot of changes from when the speaker was first born in the 70s to now. And then we have B. The population went down between 1990 and 1995. Is this true or false? That is false. It actually went up. I believe it went from 1,240,000 to about 4 million, give or take. So this one is clearly false. For C, the speaker has lived in the city all her life. Yes, the speaker speaks about the changes that she saw throughout her life living in the city. All right. We're going to be listening to the audio one more time, but this time I'd like you to focus on the specific years and I would like you to line them up with the events that you see here. So we have some events like when was the speaker born, when did the Shenzhen Metro open, um, when the population was 314,000. So all of these things should be matched with the correct year. So listen one more time and number these as you go, and then we'll check our answers together. So here we go.
My name is Dai Yu. I was born in 1972 and I am from the city of Shenzhen in southern China. My city has changed so much in my lifetime. It's incredible. When I was a child, it was just a fishing village. But Shenzhen has become a very important world city. In 1980, the Chinese government made it a special economic zone, and it began to change very quickly. The population has grown so much. In 1979, it was about 314,000. Now it is more than 10 million. In just 5 years, from 1990 to 1995, the population grew from 1,214,000 to 4,491,000. Most of the people in Shenzhen have moved from other parts of China, and millions of them leave the city at the weekend and go back to see their families. But, of course, it's not just the population that has grown. 30 years ago, there weren't any tall buildings in Shenzhen. But today, there are 23 buildings over 200 meters high. My favorite is the Shunhing Square. Workers finished building it in 1996, and at that time, it was the tallest building in Asia. It's difficult to say if all these changes have been positive or negative. A lot of things have improved, of course. We have better roads and an international airport, and we even have a metro system. It opened in 2004, and all the development has created a lot of jobs. But not everything has been good. Pollution has got worse, and, of course, the city is more crowded now.
Okay, so now that we've listened to the audio again, I hope you guys were able to get the dates with each event. Now let's take a look at it together. So A, it says workers finished building the Shunhing Square. This happened in 1996. When was the speaker born? Dayu. She was born in the 70s, so late 70s, 1970. No, it's not 1979. It was 1972. My mistake. C, the Shenzhen metro system opened. The metro system opened in 2004. The Chinese government made Shenzhen a special economic zone. This happened in 1980. And finally, the population of Shenzhen was about 314,000. This was back in 1979. Okay, so this was exercise 2 and exercise 3. All right, great. let's see. Now let's talk a little bit about the present perfect and past simple. Okay, so I'm going to start with the past simple to give you a general idea of what it is. So the past simple is typically used to describe actions or events that have happened at a specific time in the past. Okay? It usually focuses on the completion of the action, usually without any connection to the present. I could give an example, something like, let me see, I went to the park yesterday, or he's studied for the exam last week. So it's something that happened in the past and it doesn't have any connection to the present, what is going on currently. Okay. For the present perfect, it's a little bit different. We use it to describe actions or even events that have happened at some point in the past. So it happened at some point, but not at a specific point. Okay. So it doesn't have to be very specific, but it happened in the past. However, it does most of the time has to have a connection to the present. It has to have a connection to what is going on right now. And I'll give an example in a second here. Um, Usually, there's also an emphasis on the result of what happened from that event or that action. So basically, the impact of a past action to the current situation that we're in. I think once I give you an example, you'll get what I mean. For example, if I say something like, I have lived in this city for 5 years. Notice how this action happened in the past. So I've lived in this city for 5 years. It's something that already happened, but it is still happening. It's tying to the present. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Also, another part where there's an emphasis on the result or impact of a past action is something like, let me see if I can give a good example here. Um, she has recorded 3 songs. Her recording 3 songs was something that was completed in the past, but the results of those songs are still relevant today because obviously they're connected to the present. You can hear them. That's how it makes sense. So for the second example that I gave, there's an emphasis on the result, on the impact of her recording those 3 songs. Okay. A little simpler. Usually, I tend to dive a little bit deeper for the grammar because the focus box is not as detailed, and I usually like to give you a little bit more detail so that you can get a general idea of how to use them correctly when you write things down or when you're talking. So maybe take some notes during the grammar part of these videos. It helps you, and then use like the focus box to um, basically an easier way if you can like screenshot it to get a general idea to memorize it. So just leave like the learning part to my examples and then use the focus box afterwards to kind of keep everything in place in mind. So here it says, complete these rules. We use the past simple and present perfect to talk about the past. So we use both for the past. We use the dash to refer to a, let me actually see if there's a, okay, so there's not one where I can choose. I'm just going to do it here. We use the dash to refer to a finished past event. Let me see an example. I went to Egypt last year. This is something that doesn't have any connection to the present, so this is past simple. And for the second one, we use the dash to refer to an event that started in the past and may continue or has a connection to the present or the future. So the city has changed a lot and may continue to change. So in this case, this will be present perfect. Okay, awesome. Now let's go to exercise 4. We're going to be looking at the past simple, and present perfect. Let me reset this. Complete the sentences with the correct form of the verbs in brackets. So we have some verbs in brackets. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pause the video and do these yourself. Use the correct form from the brackets. We have changed, become, grow, improve, create, and get. And then come back and check your answers. All right. So assuming you've done this exercise, now let's go over them one by one. My city dash, sorry, my city dash a lot in my lifetime. this will be my city has changed a lot in my lifetime. B, Shenzhen dash a very important world city. This will be has become a very important world city. The population dash so much, and then we have grow. So we'll say the population has grown so much. D, a lot of things improve, of course. For improve, a lot of things have improved. E, development create a lot of jobs. This will be development has created a lot of jobs. And finally, F, pollution get worse. Pollution will say has gotten worse. Okay, so this was exercise 4. If yours looks a little bit different, then correct it. It's probably wrong. Okay. Now let's go to exercise 5. Looks like we have some statistics here that we're going to be reading. I'm going to reset this just in case. Read the statistics. Read the statistics and make one sentence for each using the present perfect. Can you think of any reasons for these changes? Okay, so let's focus on the first part. We're going to be reading these, and we'd like to make one sentence out of these two sentences using the present perfect. Okay, so for this one, I think, okay, I don't need to wipe out my notepad. I can just write it here. Let's take a look at the first one. The population of London in 1940 was 8.5 million. The population of London now, or is now, about 8.98 million. Okay, so if we want to, we can just take it from the example for the first one. Population has gone up by 480,000. This has turned into one sentence using the information given, but we've used the present perfect to connect them. All right, let's take a look at B. The world population was 5.2 billion in 1990. The world population is now over 7.5 billion. We could say something like, let's see, the world population has grown from 5.2 billion in 1990. I'll fix this in a second. To over, how much was it? 7.5 billion today. There you go. For C, the number of people over 65 in Japan was 11.6% in 1989. The number of people over 65 in Japan is now 26%. For this, we'll say the number of people over 65 in Japan has increased from, what was the percentage? 11.6% in 1989. You have to specify, to 26% today. Okay. Then you have D. In 1970, in the UK, a loaf of bread cost 9 pence. Now, a loaf of bread costs about 137 pence. That is a steep increase. Wow. I'll say the price of a loaf of bread in the UK has risen from 9 pence in 1970. Don't forget the year. To about 137 pence. E, the average life expectancy in the UK was 72 in 1970. Today it is 81. That's really cool, actually. Let's say the average life expectancy in the UK has increased from 72 in 1970 to 81 today. And finally, F, there was 105 million cars in China in 2011. There are 320 million cars in China today. We'll say the number of cars in China has increased from 105 million in 2011 to 320 million today. Right, so let's go over these one by one again. For A, it was the population has gone up by 480,000. This was the same as the example. And then B, the world population has grown from 5.2 billion in 1990 to over 7.5 billion today. C, the number of people over 65 in Japan has increased from 11.6% in 1989 to 26% today. The price of a loaf of bread in the UK has risen from 9 pence in 1970 to about 137 pence. Okay, the average life expectancy in the UK has increased from 72 to 1970, or sorry, from 72 in 1970 to 81 today. And finally, the number of cars in China has increased from 105 million in 2011 to 320 million today. All right, so these were some of the changes that we made using the present perfect. This was exercise 5. Okay. If you guys are in pairs, or if you're alone, it doesn't really matter, but in pairs would be a little better. So if you're in class, what I would like you to do is take a look at some of the words here. We have become, build, get worse, grow, improve, and lose. These are all verbs. I would like you to talk about your own town or city, wherever you're living, and use these verbs to write some sentences similar to the ones that we saw in the previous exercise. You can use some examples from the previous exercise, but obviously change the information so that it actually matches your specific city. And if you're in pairs, compare it with a partner. If not, just write down the sentences. That way, you get the idea of how to write about your city or town using some of the verbs here. Okay? They even give you an example here. It says the school in my town have improved a lot in the last, or the schools, sorry, plural, in my town have improved a lot in the last 10 years. Okay? So pause the video for a bit, do that, and then come back and we'll move on. All right, let's see here. Now we're going to be moving to the third part of Unit 4, which will be for C. We have a sense of adventure. That sounds exciting. Looks like we're going to be, what are we going to be doing? We're going to be watching a slideshow video together. But before we do that, let's take a look at the pictures here. I'd like you to pause the video for a bit and just take a quick look at these pictures and think about what you see and what it could represent in the slideshow. If you're in pairs, you could talk about it with your partner as well, and then come back and we'll move on. Personally, it looks like there's going to be some stuff about traveling. I see a passport. It looks to be somewhere, maybe in Europe, I'm guessing, or a specific country. We have a smartphone with a trip advisor, which I'm guessing is an app that you could use to review some of the places that you want to visit before actually going there. You could also look at prices, things like that. This would be my educated guess. Maybe you have similar ideas. Maybe you have some other stuff that I couldn't think of. That is completely fine as well. Now let's go to 3 and actually watch the slideshow. All right. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. It's about 8 minutes. So you're going to be looking at the video and checking to see if your ideas were right or wrong. Maybe you got some of them right. Maybe you weren't able to get all of them. That's completely fine. So I'm going to play the video, and then after that, we're going to discuss it together. So here we go.
When you are planning a trip abroad, you have lots to think about. Where will you stay? What will you see? How much money are you going to need? And are you ready for an adventure? You have to do some research. These days, the first place many people look for travel information is online. Websites like TripAdvisor host millions of up-to-date reviews on hotels, restaurants, places to go, and things to do. Negative reviews can really hurt a business. This means that businesses have to maintain high standards. If a restaurant serves bad food or has rude staff, everyone knows. So, here's a travel tip. The next time you stay at a hotel, put a TripAdvisor tag on your luggage. Or, when you arrive at a restaurant, make a show of using the app. The customer service will be top class. Most of the reviews on travel websites are written by travelers for travelers. Everyone can share their experiences. Great! But remember, all online reviews are based on opinions. And some opinions are more useful than others. Some people can be a little bit unfair. What did this reviewer expect? Some reviews are obviously biased. Some people can't use computers very well. This reviewer probably wanted to award more than 1 out of 5. You also have to remember that the internet is full of jokers. Some reviews are quite funny, but not very helpful. And some people will complain about anything. So, we have to decide which reviews are helpful to us and which we can ignore. Assessing information like this is a key 21st century skill. Guidebooks are another good source of travel information. They usually include useful maps and lists of recommended destinations. They are well researched. and the quality of writing is very high. Imagine you are planning a city break in Istanbul. Great choice. An amazing experience is waiting for you. So, you buy a guidebook and read all about the city. Naturally, you decide to visit all the must-see attractions. You walk across the stunning Ataturk Bridge. You go to see the wonderful Hagia Sophia. You visit the elegant Blue Mosque with its blue tiles and 6 minarets. You take a trip to the Byzantine Hippodrome. And you spend a day at the Grand Topkapi Palace. Wonderful stuff. What a great holiday. You've seen all there is to see in Istanbul. Home time. But wait, have you sampled everything Istanbul has to offer? Really? Remember that travel is about people as well as places. It's about meeting other travelers. And it's about mixing with local people and absorbing their culture. You can learn more about a place in a 10-minute chat with a local person than you can in hours of reading or browsing on the internet. Travel is also about adventure. The most interesting parts of a city are not always the tourist attractions. What about the markets, squares, cafes, and restaurants where the locals go? So, how about you? The next time you have a day or two to spare in a new city, will you leave your guidebook in the hotel and your phone in your pocket? Who knows who you'll meet or what you'll discover? Often, the unplanned parts of a trip turn out to be the highlights. So, next time you're preparing for a trip, don't forget to pack your sense of adventure.
Okay, so that was the slideshow. That was very informative. I have liked that. I quite missed a bit of stuff. There was a lot to unpack, but nonetheless, the general idea was there for me, as I'm sure it was there for you as well. Okay, now that we've gotten a good idea of what the slideshow is about, let's go to exercise 4, where there's a discussion. If you're in pairs, this is ideal because you can talk to the other person and discuss with them. If not, that's still fine, but you're just going to be talking to yourself probably. But it's okay. It's just to get you to talk, get you to think about certain questions. Obviously, try to say things out loud in English. It helps you with your speaking. So ask yourself questions like, when you travel, do you plan ahead or do you take things as they come? What do you think is the most important consideration when deciding where to travel? What do you think traveling is about? And do you trust internet reviews from other travelers? And finally, do you consult guidebooks? I'm going to go over this briefly just so that I'm a part of the discussion, so I don't just tell you what to do and then decide to move on. briefly, let's talk about it. When you travel, do you plan ahead or do you take things as they come? I'm a chronic planner myself. I like to plan ahead as much as possible. I don't like negative surprises, whatever that may be, especially when it comes to airports, travel. I do not like surprises when it comes to airports and travel, so I do my best to plan ahead as much as I can. What do you think is the most important consideration when deciding where to travel? Um, I would say the first one would be financially. Like, there's a lot of cool places out there that you can visit, but it also depends on how many people are you taking with you and where are you going to decide to stay? Is it a luxurious hotel like we saw in the previous parts in Unit 4A? Or is it somewhere that's not very expensive, or you decide to live somewhere that is quite cheap? These are all things to take into consideration. And the second part is, are you going to have fun? I mean, what is the point of a vacation if it's not to wind down, have a good time, get out of the monotony of a regular, if you have like a regular 9 to 5, just everyday routine life? I feel like if you're traveling somewhere and you're not going to have a good time, or, you're not particularly interested in that culture, then that kind of defeats the whole purpose. What do you think traveling is about? Like I said, I mean, I don't travel much, to be completely honest with you, but I would say traveling is about experiencing new cultures, new food, having a good time, just breaking out of that routine of everyday life that most people live year by year. Do you trust internet reviews from other travelers? I'd say yes and no. It's a very good idea to read some internet reviews, especially if a place has a lot of reviews. You'll find some good ones. Obviously, like the slideshow said, there are trolls and jokers and people that don't know how to use computers. Uh, I think having a filter mechanism is a very important skill in this day and age, to be able to differentiate between the reviews that are actually helpful and the ones that are not very helpful, the ones that are biased, the ones that are clearly giving comparisons, things like that. But yes, overall, I do trust internet reviews. You just have to be wary of the type of reviews that you take into consideration. Do you consult guidebooks? I personally don't, but I do see the appeal. I feel like anything that a guidebook has can also be used, or can also be accessed on the internet, especially on something like YouTube, where you can just write something and get a video of someone visiting so many cool underground places in whatever city you decide to go to. But guidebooks work as well. I'm more tech savvy, so I'd probably prefer something digital, like looking things up. Maybe the use of AI could help in something like this. But guidebooks definitely have their place. All right, now let's go to 5. Think about your own travels and make notes. All right, so for this part, you're going to be talking, well, not talking, you're going to be, well, yes, talking. You could even write these if you want. Your own travels, vacations that you've been to, and take some notes on these specific questions. What is the best trip you've been on? Where did you go? Who did you go with? What did you do? What was the weather like? And what was the most memorable experience? I don't want to dive into too much detail on this one because I feel like discussing it with yourself over video is kind of weird. But I would like you to, if you guys are in pairs or even if you're alone, just pause the video for a bit, talk about it. This is a great way to discuss and talk about your own. There's no right or wrong answer. You're basically just recollecting memories, good memories, I hope, thoughts, and things that you've been through. All right. Let's see what we got here. Okay, it looks like we have a text here. Read the text below, which compares two cities. What information did you not know before you read the text? Did any information surprise you? Okay, so take about 30 seconds to a minute, and I would like you to quickly skim over the text here to get a general idea of what it is talking about. I've already read this, so I'm not going to spend too much time reading the text itself, but you can feel free to pause the video to read it and then come back. All right. Let's take a look at the writing focus box here, and we've talked about this in previous units. We have something called showing contrast. Showing contrast is when you're comparing two things in a surprising manner between two things, perhaps in a text. In this case, it's going to be cities, so let's take a look. The city of New York has an area of 778 square kilometers. On the other hand, if you guys remember in previous units, we said statements like on the other hand are ways to connect two facts together using shock factor and to combine them together. So on the other hand, the city of Phoenix is much bigger. It has an area of 1,340 square kilometers. Although Phoenix has a greater area than New York, Phoenix has a smaller population with only 1.6 million people. I personally did not know that until I read this text, and I find that really cool. Okay. Here's also another type of comparison where you compare things like sizes, costs, numbers, things like that. You could say something like Phoenix is almost twice as big as New York. The population of New York is about 5 times the population of Phoenix. Here we're comparing size and we're comparing numbers. Okay. If you notice, if you take a look at the words in, what even is this color? It's purple, I think. So the words that are highlighted are basically the words that show contrast and give comparisons. So right here, it says New York is located on the east coast of the United States and is a port city. The city is in the state of New York. In contrast, so this is, again, giving you total difference and comparisons. In contrast, Phoenix is in a southern state. It is surrounded by desert and mountains. And yada yada, you know. Also here, the city of New York has an area of 778 square kilometers and it has a population of 8.8 million people. On the other hand, like we saw earlier, the city of Phoenix is much bigger. It has an area of yada yada yada. So it is almost twice as big. Twice as big is us giving comparisons of numbers, size, etc. as New York. Although is again showing contrast, Phoenix has a greater area than New York. Phoenix has a smaller population with only 1.6 million people. Okay, I hope you guys are able to get the idea of how we show contrast and how we compare different things. In this case, it's between cities. All right. This is just a really quick exercise. What information would you compare when you write about certain things? For example, this is city or village. For city or village, we could talk about things like population. You could talk about size. Basically, everything that is written here. You could talk about places for tourists. You could talk about restaurants, something that it is famous for, as long as it has a comparison with another city or village in a certain context. It makes sense. We have a car. For a car, you could talk about things like, okay, I should have probably gone for B, but it's fine. So I'm just gonna say a car. For a car, you could talk about reliability. You could talk about price. You could talk about things like, to be more specific, transmission, manual, automatic, and downsides and upsides to each one. Also, fuel economy, overall feeling of the car, how it drives. All of these are things that you could write about when that's the kind of information that you could use when you write comparisons. Your favorite shop, well, this will greatly depend. If it's a flower shop, you'll talk about the different kinds of flowers, different seasons, what they have, what they don't have, things like that. But it could be like a video game shop, for example, and then it's a totally different thing. So this will depend. Finally, a country or place you would like to visit. Well, you talk about things like reviews, like what do the overwhelming majority of reviews say? Is it negative? Is it positive? Places that everyone should visit, places that people should probably stay away from, especially as foreigners. Um, Perhaps specific cities if you're talking about a country. Um, Prices are a big thing. You could talk about prices. Um, Flight tickets, depending on where you are, things like that. Again, this is very general. You could also have your own answers. This is not set in stone, by the way. Okay, now let's see exercise 4. Complete the sentences with possible endings to show contrast and or something surprising. So we have one part of a sentence here with an end, any possible ending basically. But basically we're going to be filling it in. So we're going to be writing the other part of the contrast or something surprising. So I've already written these and I'm going to show you them in a second. But before I do that, I'd like you to pause the video and do this on your own. Don't copy it from me word for word. I would like you to write your own and then perhaps check your answers. If something is wrong, is not quite right, you can fix it and then check how I wrote mine. So let me take a look. For 4, I've actually done them all here. So let me show you my contrast for each one. For A, we said, I do not spend a lot of time watching television. On the other hand, this is my part, I spend a significant amount of time reading books and listening to podcasts. Do you need to write it this exact same way? Absolutely not. You could talk about anything else. You could even something that is completely different from this. The main idea is it's not something set in stone. As long as it's correct, you're golden. I attended 2 football games last week. However, the first game was boring. On the other hand, the second game was exciting. There's no need for "and" here. So was exciting. Wait, no, actually it is. Was an exciting, close matchup that went into overtime. In my opinion, the internet is sometimes a distraction. On the other hand, it has also provided me with valuable resources and opportunities to learn and connect with people. I use electronic media to stay in contact with my friends. In addition, again, another way to show contrast, it has allowed me to reconnect with old acquaintances and expand my social network. When you buy a car, you should think of more than the price. In addition, you should think of the fuel efficiency, safety features, maintenance costs, and long-term reliability before making your purchase. And if you guys remember, in the previous exercise, there was the topic of a car and what would we use. So it's the same exact thing: fuel efficiency, safety features, all of that. My first phone cost me $300. My second phone cost me $600. It was a significant investment, but the improved features, performance, and durability made it worth the higher price. Although the bus was scheduled to arrive at 8 a.m., it ended up being 15 minutes late due to unexpected traffic. Although I felt nervous before the interview, I was able to compose myself and give a confident and articulate performance. Okay, so this was me showing contrast in the part that was missing for each of the sentences here. And let's see, do we have anything else here? No, I think this concludes Unit 4. So this officially wraps up Unit 4. We've done Unit 4A, B, and C in this video. Well, A was another video, B and C were for this one. I hope you learned something new. I hope you had a good time. And I will see you in the next unit. Stay safe. Bye-bye.